Rise to Reign podcast. I'm your host, Amy Killingsworth, and this episode is on polarity. And I'm, on the one hand, really excited for this episode because I get super passionate and excited about this topic. And it is the one thing that makes people come alive when they understand this and they get this. And it has the greatest potential for life change when you embrace the side of the pole that you are meant to be on. It's like coming home to yourself. And I've seen this happen over and over and over again, and I love it. So I'm really excited about this topic. On the other hand, it is sort of an area where angels fear to tread, and part of me doesn't want to touch it because it has so much potential for offense and shame. But hopefully by now, if you've been following along with me and listening, you have made the commitment to not throw your shame off with blame and to not be offended and to keep an open mind. And that's really all that I ask of you as I go through this. Just keep an open mind. You and I do not have to agree, and I celebrate you wherever you're at, and you are so loved and so valuable, and nothing that I say is ever intended to shame you. But because I love you and because I want the best for you and the healing of your heart and the healing of the world, this is something that has to be addressed. So in Rise to Reign language, when we do the integrity module in our live events, there's a section that I did not cover in the podcast, and it's called I Will Not Stand With You in a Lie. And this is when we take a stand for somebody else's higher self, when we can see that they're living far below what is true about them and their higher self and the queen or king inside of them. We call that higher self out. We call that king out. We call that queen out. And the vernacular we give that is I will not stand with you in a lie. So this is me maybe not standing with you in a lie. Maybe you've believed some lies about your polarity, about your gender, and about your identity as a male or a female. And so this session, this podcast, is hopefully going to shed some clarity on that. If nothing else, like I said, we don't have to agree. We can still be friends, and I can still love you, and you can still love me, I hope. But if nothing else, it'll give you something to think about and maybe plant some seeds for later. So with that being said, let's get started. So let's define polarity. Polarity is the possession or manifestation of two opposing attributes, tendencies, or principles. In the case of gender polarity, we're talking about masculine and feminine. So these are the opposite sides of the poles. So I want you to imagine the North Pole and the South Pole, the Earth, the globe. There's the North Pole and the South Pole, and they're completely opposite. Well, you can be all the way at the North Pole, or you can be all the way at the South Pole, or you can be anywhere in between. But there is a place, it's called the equator, where you cross from one to the other. You cross over from south to north, or you cross over from north to south. So anytime up until you get to the equator, you are actually in that pole, in that region, in the south region. And then when you cross over, then you're in the other region. But you can be deeper into the region all the way up to the end, which is the other spectrum of the pole. So I want you to think of polarity as the masculine pole. We call that the South Pole, and the North Pole, which is femininity. And you're somewhere on that spectrum. Every human is. So there's something really important to understand about polarity, and that is its interplay with attraction, or what we would call chemistry. So when you fall in love, or when you're super attracted to someone, or what we say is, we have great chemistry with somebody, that always has to do with polarity. And so the further apart you are on the poles is directly related to how attracted you are to the other person. So the farther you are into femininity and the farther he is into masculinity, the stronger the attraction is going to be. And as you move closer, You can be really close friends. You can love people with like a familial love, but you're not going to have that attraction. The closer you get together on the poles to the center, to that degree, attraction diminishes. Conversely, the further away you move from each other, attraction increases. So, and I don't mean away from each other in distance, I mean away from each other in polarity. So super, super feminine is going to be attracted to really, really, really masculine. Do you guys like what I did with my voice there? It really helps give you the picture, doesn't it? So that's polarity and attraction. Let's also talk about polarity and identity. And this is where it gets a little bit dicey. So your gender expression or your sexuality is at the core of your identity. It's at the core of who you are. And there's a scripture, Genesis 1:27 says, "So God created man is in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them." So God's not male, okay, or female. He's both. The reason we say he is not because he's a boy, but because he's often referred to in the Bible as father. However, there's many, many passages where there are feminine attributes applied to God and where he is also referred to as a mother type character. So God is both. He's equally both. He's not male and he's not female. He's not a boy or a girl. He's a spirit. But in order to fully express the image and the nature of God, we have to have both male and female. It's really, really, really important. So God isn't a gender. He doesn't have polarity. He is a perfect blend of masculine and feminine. So the male and the female, the masculine and the feminine together completely express the image of God. The masculine by itself does not express fully the image of God, and neither does the feminine. So it's really, really important as we move on. So have you ever considered the odds that the amount of boys versus girls that are born into the world is almost exactly half and half? I would love somebody to do the math, some type of statistician to do the math on what the odds of that happening by just random combination of genes and DNA for the genders of babies, all babies born into the world, to be exactly half and half. That's crazy, right? No, it's not crazy. It's extremely intentional. There's nothing random in the universe. So God gives everyone something, but he doesn't give anyone everything. So we're each a piece of the puzzle. So as a woman, I need a man to fully express the image of God. Now, pause. I am not saying that I am incomplete without a man. I'm not saying that I can't be fully expressed without a man. I'm saying that without the masculine influence in my life, whether that be a father or a son or a friend, the community is incomplete. The expression of God for a community to fully express the image and the nature of God, we need both the masculine and the feminine. So that's the one thing that's actually left over from the Garden of Eden, is a healthy romantic relationship between a masculine man and a feminine woman is so exciting and so desirable to most people because it's the full expression of God, of the image of God in that one relationship. And that's why we desire our counterpart, most of us. We desire to have that counterpart because we want to have the other piece of the puzzle to fully express the image and the likeness of God. We need both mothers and fathers. We need sisters and brothers. We need both male and female to fully express the image of God. I can't stress that enough. We need both mothers and fathers, men and women in churches. We need both men and women in companies. We need an equal balance of masculine and feminine, roughly equal, to fully express the image of God. We need that in a family. We need that in organizations. An attack on gender, get this, really important. Maybe write it down. An attack on gender is an attack on the image of God. So anything that diminishes femininity or feminine qualities diminishes the image and the likeness of God, and vice versa. Anything that attacks masculinity. We've got this whole business about toxic masculinity going on in our culture right now. Anything that attacks masculinity is a attack on the image and the nature and the likeness of God. And if you follow that all the way through to its results, you can see exactly what the source of it is. It's darkness. It's the entity and the system that hates God and hates natural law, that wants to attack gender and diminish people based on their gender identity. So males and females are exactly equal in importance, worthiness, giftedness, and everything else. One's not better, one's not more important, one's not more worthy. It's really, really important to understand that. And a lot of the things that we call, in another episode, I'm going to get into what are masculine qualities and what are feminine qualities, and then what are the masculine shadow and what is the feminine shadow, meaning how does the feminine show up when it's healed and whole and healthy as the queen, and how does it show up when it's the slave, the princess, or the prisoner. Vice versa, how does a masculine show up when it's healed and whole as the king versus how it shows up in the shadow, or the unhealed, the wounded masculine, which is the prisoner, the slave, and the prince. So even though we're equally as important, equally gifted, equally worthy, we're very, very, very different. And this is where people start to get offended, because there's an agenda that wants to homogenize gender and not put labels on it and not create paradigms or descriptions. But that is, again, that's an attack. That's an attack on gender, which is an attack on the image and nature of God. To fully express your identity, you need to know who you are, and you can't know who you are without understanding what end of the pole you occupy. So have you ever noticed that there's been an obvious push in media, entertainment, and popular culture to vilify masculinity in men and encourage masculinity in women? Okay, to vilify masculinity in men or make fun of it, and to encourage masculinity in women. I'll get to that in just a minute when we talk about modern feminism. But there is a cultural perception that feminine qualities like nurture and intuition are less valuable than masculine qualities like strategy and execution. So whereas men are vilified for being masculine, which is, being strategic and being aggressive and being, wanting to make stuff happen and wanting to build and create and to have an effect on the world that's very, very, very masculine. Those things are vilified in men but glorified in women with feminism. Why is that? Have you ever asked why that is? So in order to be healthy, we need to, as women, as feminine persons, we need to address and identify and embrace our femininity. And those are every bit, those qualities like intuition and nurture are every bit as valuable and needed. In fact, a culture, a company, a family, a church without the feminine influence is very, very profoundly unhealthy. And vice versa, a fatherless culture without the influence, the protection, the provision, the direction, the strategy of masculinity is profoundly unhealthy. We need both. So every human has both masculine and feminine qualities, and we need those. We need to have those. But at your core, there's a place where you're at home. So as a woman, I have to access masculine qualities to get out of bed and even get moving in the morning. If you're all feminine, then you're just basically like a hurricane. You're chaotic and you have no direction and you are not contained and you just are over the edge in pleasure and beauty, and you have nothing to contain that and move it in a direction and to channel that into something useful. So you have to be able to access masculine qualities as a female, as a feminine person. But you need to know how it's like going on vacation. You need to know how to go there and enjoy it for what it is, and utilize it, but you need to know how to come home. And you need to love sleeping in your own bed, so to speak. You need to come home to your femininity. You need to be able to embrace that and to embody it and to occupy your femininity and step into masculine qualities when you need them, but come home and live and breathe and exist in your femininity. I'm going to cover in a separate podcast. Again, I'm going to cover this in a lot more detail. Same with men. Men need to be able to access feminine qualities to have relationships. Otherwise, they would be all hunting and gathering and building companies, and they wouldn't be able to connect and love and have relationships. So I'll get into this a lot deeper, but I just want to really drive home the point that you have a core, you have a home. And even though you need to be able to access and master certain qualities that are not at your home, where you're not at home, you need to always know how to come back to and live in your home. As a culture, we have pushed men away from masculinity, and we've lost the strength of masculinity as a result. And I'm going to get to this deeper when I actually do the podcast on masculinity, but have you ever asked yourself why? Why do we seek to make men more feminine? And why do we seek to make women more masculine? What forces are at work? So I like the idea of feminism in that it's the idea that women are equal to men, but modern feminism has done more to destroy femininity and masculinity than just about anything else, in my opinion. And don't get me wrong, I believe women should lead. I believe women should be in leadership positions, high-level leadership positions. I believe women should be in the workforce. I believe women should be in the government. I believe women should be in ministry in equal amounts. Remember, we need both genders to express adequately or completely the image of God. So where feminism is concerned, I'm not talking necessarily about rights for women or equal pay for women. I'm talking about this idea that women have to become more masculine and take over masculine roles. Because rather than celebrating feminine qualities, modern feminism has devalued femininity and sought to exalt masculine qualities. But in women, that's a problem. Feminism looks down on masculine qualities in men, but exalts them in women. We're going to talk about it more when we parse these out and talk specifically and separately about masculinity and femininity. But modern feminism exalts those masculine attributes in women and devalues them in men. And they also seek to usurp masculine roles. Now, when I say roles, I'm not coming from the perspective that, judges should be men, or that a certain gender should fill a certain position or job or vocation. But there are specific roles that we play that we will not be happy or fulfilled unless we play them from our home. So when I say roles, I'm being a little bit obtuse here because I'm going to get into it in detail and unpack it individually for femininity and masculinity. But when I say roles, I'm not talking about vocation. I'm talking about women bringing their feminine gifts to the workplace, to the family, to their relationships, especially to their relationships, and men being encouraged and celebrated for doing the same thing. Because when we have both, that's when a family or an organization is healthy. When we have both operating from their home as what they are, as the inside matching the outside. So integrity ties in to this as well. So gender confusion is a big thing. And I want to be really, really, really careful here because, again, I do not want to put any kind of shame or any kind of guilt or any kind of offense on you. I don't want you to pick up offense off of this. Just hear me out. Gender confusion is such a big deal right now, and It didn't used to be. And I don't believe for a second that it was a big deal, but nobody felt comfortable talking about it. It's a big deal because culture promotes gender confusion, and culture promotes this idea that gender is fluid and that you just decide what gender you are. And nothing could be further than the truth, and nothing could be a more significant attack on the image of God that humans carry. And I know that that's a strong position. And I know that there's a lot of people struggling and a lot of people suffering. But I personally won't stand with you or culture in a lie, because as much as some people might want to hear that this is okay and that it's normal, it isn't. And it is an attack at the very essence of who a person is. And that needs to be healed, because people who don't know who they are really easy to control, to manipulate, and to lie to. And if you don't know one of the most basic things about you, about your identity, which is what gender you are, then you are easy to be controlled, to manipulate, and to be lied to. So you have to ask yourself, who benefits from that? Who benefits from that? If you back it all the way up and you look at entertainment and you look at different cultural offerings and see how gender confusion and gender fluidity has evolved and how it has gained strength over time. What's driving it? What's driving it? So when we were talking about earlier how masculine men are really few and far between, and in the past, masculine men were what protected society. The warriors, culturally, they were necessary to keep the bad guys from invading and raping and pillaging the village. And so if we don't have masculine men as a culture and a society, we are vulnerable. But equally as true is that if we don't have feminine women as a society, we are very vulnerable. A society of masculine men without a feminine influence, it gets really weird really fast and really dangerous really fast. We need both to adequately and completely express the full image of God as humanity, as humans. So I just want to, we'll dig deeper into this, but I just want to leave you with that question: is if gender confusion is an attack on your identity, and if you don't know who you are, you're easy to control, manipulate, and be lied to, and that the fluidity of gender, whereas there are no masculine men and there are no feminine women, it puts a society at serious risk. Who might benefit from that? Who might benefit from that? Could it be people or groups of people who want to confuse and create chaos for the purpose of controlling, manipulating, and enslaving humanity? Is it possible? Just think about that. Think about who benefits and think about what is the outcome. What's the logical outcome of destroying the concepts masculine men and feminine women, the concepts of strong masculinity and strong femininity. And then let's look at these separately. Let's look at masculinity and let's look at femininity. That's coming up in the next 2 episodes of the Rise to Reign podcast. That's it for this episode. Thank you so much for being with me. I hope we're still friends. More on this to come. And thank you so much for listening. I'll see you in the next one.